Thank you.
Hey,
Chad
George.
Stubenbort. Should be good.
Alrighty. Good evening. Chad Stubenbort, resident of Monroeville. So before I get into everything, I just wanted to start with one comment. If there was a Times Express article about Gators Give Back. So the Gateway alumni, Brittany Smith, started where they're actually getting donations for students in the Gateway School District that need food, that need clothes, need jackets coming up. So I just want to make the public aware. If you guys are on Facebook, there's a group called Gators Give Back. Look it up. If anyone's willing to help out, please let us know. We're actively identifying any students. Also, to any parents with students in the district, if you have any students that need any help, please reach out through Gators Give Back. You can message anonymously.
I'm not a Facebook guy, but is it on your website?
It is not yet. It'll have to be board approved before it's on there, but yeah, we will work on it.
It was in the Times Express last week.
I did see that, but I
Nice
mean, I
article.
don't remember seeing it somewhere you can, other than Facebook and not on.
Yeah, right now it's operating on Facebook. They're getting everything, all the paperwork in, so I will keep everyone abreast
But
of
that
it.
will be on your website?
Yes, eventually.
Okay, very good.
All right, so last week I came up and I just asked a few questions about sustainability, about utilization of the fund balance. And I was asked, is there any fat that can be cut? And several individuals said there is no place to be cut. So just to look at the numbers, the total budget or proposed budget is $31,360,000. Inside of that budget is $500,000 of fund balance utilization. So one recommendation, I don't know if you guys have looked at this, I haven't heard it brought up yet though, is if every department were to cut just 1.59%, you would not have to use any of the fund balance. So just a very marginal change, you'd be able to save all that fund balance. So that was the one thing. The other things I just wanted to go through, since I was asked by a council member last week if there was any fat. So I do apologize, I only had one day to spend on this, not an entire year, but a few areas I would look at is the council pay, the mayor pay, possibly look at canceling that. The zoning and hearing board, I believe there's $5,000 or $6,000 there you could look at. The senior citizen center, and I have nothing against the senior citizen center, so I'm going to start by that. But when we look at it, it's $467,000. There's 5,000 members there. I believe it's great for all of our residents. I do know we allow outside residents to partake in the activities, though. And I believe we charge them a nominal $5 or $10 fee.
A month.
Yeah. So the
Monthly fee.
yeah. So one thing I would recommend looking at is possibly just dividing out the costs. So if it's $467,000, divide that by the total amount of members, and any member from outside of Monroeville that would like to utilize the center, just charge them that $93 to help recoup some of those costs.
They also bring in proceeds from the Silver Sneakers and the Silver Fit programs that are run through the hospitals.
Yep, just offering suggestions to balance the budget.
You did see that the senior center saved over $60,000 in the budget this year?
I did. I also saw that the proposed budget is actually increased over the actual budget, so the proposed budget from last year is actually way under. So another thing would be thinking outside of the box, but actually possibly working with Gateway and looking at refuse collection. So Gateway currently spends $40,000 to have another company come and take the dumpsters. I know we would have to retrofit and have to probably get new dumpsters, but that might be an area where we could look at, instead of us paying an outside company, possibly paying Monroeville, getting you guys some more revenue. Well, I mean, the school district's going to pay it one way or another. So I'm not sure if that's feasible, but just a suggestion to look at. The other thing would be looking at longevity pay. I know that a lot of that has to do with the CBAs, and you can't really touch that right away. But just looking at, we're paying $150,000, just under $150,000 in longevity pay. And longevity pay usually, when you look at corporations, is used for top-end people to try to keep them there. Where in Monroeville, we're already paying very well, which is good because we're getting very good service out of all of our employees. But to pay an additional $150,000, that's a lot of money. That's an additional police officer per year. So that just might be something to look at as contract negotiations come up. The right to know officer, I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification there. I know it's only $15,000 expense, but I was just doing some math. So there's 174 requests last year. So if we divide that by 12 months, right, that's 14.5 per month. Divided on a weekly basis, 4 weeks, that's 3.6 a week. Roughly how how long does it take to answer right now? I know, obviously, depending upon the information requested, it could vary, but, it's 15 minutes, a half hour.
Depends. Depends on what information is being requested. Could take all day sometimes.
Okay.
How many have we had so far this year, Joe?
So far this year,
140 is in the budget.
186 this year so far.
We have one person that has filed, out of that 186, how many?
98.
90.
He's over 50%, Mr. Yakem. If he wanted to know so much, he could have joined the Home Rule Charter Committee, but he is costing the taxpayers a lot of money with his right to knows. He'll put in 5, 6, 7 at one time.
Yeah, and I'm not here to debate any of that. Obviously, I haven't filed a right to
Well,
know
I think it's
to
right.
date.
I think the taxpayer should know that one individual is
Oh, absolutely.
costing
That's-
them a whole lot of money with him questioning everything when it was an open forum to ask to be put on, let's say, the Home Rule Charter Committee. He never applied for it, but he, every single week, is asking for any kind of information for it, and that all has to be responded to.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I was just trying to get an idea of how long it would take to respond.
Excuse me, Chad, but the other side of it is, if he doesn't like the answer, he takes us to court, and then it's court costs for us at that point.
yes, and that's the more expensive
He
area.
appeals to Harrisburg, and he does that regularly.
Yeah, just looking at,
But I'm sorry,
Otherwise-
Chad, to your point, though, that part is under Mr. Little's budget, which we didn't talk about that yet in an open forum, where I believe I'll probably get to that at the end of this meeting.
Just spitballing here. So again, I think the easiest thing to do would just be to look at budget, see if you can find 1.59%, and that would completely do away with the utilization of the fund balance, which would at least allow us to have a sustainable budget moving forward. And then the last thing I just want to leave you guys with, the microphones do pick up a lot. So if anyone wants to say anything towards citizens, any profanity, I would probably recommend against that. So with that, thank you.
Len Young.
Good evening.
On that. Last but not least, I want to address a couple issues that was brought up by Mr. Stubenbort, who is the current president of the Gateway School Board. It's interesting he brings up the senior center, our garbage pickup, and I'll address, and I can't remember a couple other things. If you all remember, we've had those discussions a couple of years ago when we first, you remember when we talked a little bit about maybe moving garbage to maybe Waste Management or another company? You as residents spoke extremely clearly, that's never going to happen. Do you remember when we talked about dispatch center? Some people brought up maybe we should move the dispatch center. You all, again, spoke extremely clearly. You do not want that to ever go. I support all that from day one, by the way. And again, you talk about council salary. I'm going to talk about myself. There's some, it's almost funny. A couple of times, some residents have said to me, gee, Mayor, you make about $60,000 or $80,000 a year as mayor of Monroeville, right? I went, what? I said, you're kidding, right? He said, no, don't you get paid full time? No, I do not. I get $452 a month. I burn a lot of that up in gas. And if those of you who know me, I answer my phone 7 days a week. I come out to your home. You meet me at this municipal building. I'm out in the evening. I'm on a day, Saturday, Sunday. It doesn't make any difference. So do I feel bad taking that $452 a month? No, I don't, because there's some months I even burn out almost that much just in gas. Because I go to the Allegheny County meetings, I go to some state issues. I represent us well, and I know every one of these folks do exactly the same thing.
Correct.
So to say that, and I think they get $100 less than
That's
me. I think
correct.
it's about $350 a month they get. If anybody really has any real issue in that, I'm just shocked. The other thing they give, and I'll be up front with you, once a year, I go to Seven Springs for training. And I don't know the exact cost. I think it's about $1,000, maybe a little bit more for anybody that goes. That's it. I don't turn in mileage. I don't turn in anything. I don't turn no expenses. Oh, and they also pay two things for me. $30 a year so I can be a member of the Allegheny County Mayor's Association, which is a good thing. Second thing, I'm a member of the chamber. So if you all think that we're overspending and killing you on this budget, please, I'm willing to sit and call me. You have my cell number. It's everywhere. So I would love to talk with you. I just had to address that. I think, and Chad can eloquently say what we need to do. Let's take a look at that school district. I can cut a lot up at that school district. Okay? I can cut a lot up. I mean, they double plus our budget. We take care of the whole municipality. They take care of maybe, 400 employees? So, at any rate, enough said. Only.
Good evening again. My name is Chad Stubenbort, resident of Monroeville. Just wanted to address two things that are budget-related that were made at the end of the meeting. Number one, I never recommended outsourcing refuse collection. I recommended looking at an additional revenue source.
I didn't say you did. I
gateways.
said that we discussed that as a council.
So that was the one point I wanted to make. Number two, never brought up any of those other things. So again, I'm just going to make a blanket statement. I recommend looking at cutting 1.59% and balancing the budget without fund utilization. No plans to outsource. No plans on shutting down or combining the center.
Chad, I have to address, I mean, your point, everybody wants to cut, okay? Everybody wants to, run an organization as nimble as possible. Doesn't matter if it's a municipality or Joe's Auto Body Shop. And your point is well taken. Back in 2009, just to give you a little history, and you may know better about it than I do, because you lived here at that time, I didn't. The municipality brought in an outside consultant to cut, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, everybody cut 10% from their budget. Not 1.5, 10%. Where before, little things like, we had water coolers upstairs, that was taken out. Now we pay for it ourselves, the employees, okay? So then I come on board in 2010. I'm given a mandate by council to cut 10%, 5% from budgets again. And on top of that, people retire, they're not replaced. All right. Now we fast forward to the present, and I'm just giving you a Reader's Digest version. You fast forward to the present. You can only cut and cut and cut so much. Now, can we cut more? Unquestionably. We can cut till the cows come home. We can cut the senior citizens. We can cut the whole thing. Council can say, we're not going to have, and I'm being, over the top, and you know that. I mean, we can say to the Senior Citizen Center, we're really, really going to, hey, we can't afford it, we're going to cut 25% from your budget. We can cut the TV station, not have it, okay? We can cut what we give to the library, all right? We're slated possibly to hire 2 more police officers. We can tell Mr. Cole, we're not doing that. All right, that saves us $400,000. But we have a mission here, just like you have a mission on the school board. We have a mission to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Now, a large part of that is law enforcement, and a large part of that is doing simple things that you do in paving roads. Now, through the decades and through the century, municipalities have taken on libraries, park and recreation, senior citizen centers, and they make a quality of life in the community. They increase property values, and they make Monroeville, our community park, we get rave reviews on a community park. The council back in 2006 could have decided I don't even know what it cost, $12 million. I hear all kind of different figures on what it cost for the community park. And at that time, we had maybe $20 million in I think it was $20 million in the coffers going back 12 years ago. They could have decided, no, we're not doing that. We're not building the community park. Well, they made the decision to build the community park. And now it's a very good decision. History has shown that was a very good decision. Now, if you had somebody on council at that time said, no, we can't do that, that's too frivolous. But they did it. Now, there was thoughts of maybe putting a swimming pool up at the park, but we haven't done that. So every council has their ideas on what a quality of life in a community is. My bottom line point is you keep cutting, you keep cutting, you keep cutting, you're not going to have one of the better communities in Allegheny County. And 3 years ago, I showed a chart on where communities are on a maturation process. And you hit an apex, you start out very small as a rural area, you hit an apex, and then you start on a downward slope. And if you look at it as a clock, with noon being your apex, we're about at 1 o'clock coming down on a downward slope. And we want to prevent that. We want to put a stopgap in there. Now, does that mean you look at your budget and do the things that you're talking about? Unquestionably, you do. And we do that. We do that. And I think the mayor pointed out rather poignantly on what he does with his money, and everybody else up here statutorily are permitted to get. And you can cut that. Everybody up here can say, okay, we're not going to get that money, which equals up to about $25,000. But it's not going to do anything to the quality of life in Monroeville. But it helps the people up on this dais, it helps them out tremendously to help govern this community. And that's why the state legislature puts that in the borough code from decades ago, that they can do that. So there's two sides of the coin to look at when you're looking at cutting and cutting and cutting. And you want to also keep the morale of the employees up. If you constantly don't replace people in departments, they get tired of being overstressed, trying to complete things that can't be complete. Then I complain to them, council complains to me, and then you just have a bad place to work. And you want to try to prevent that also. So you always have to be cognizant of those kind of things when you bring up cutting. You get to a point where you just can't cut anymore.
Yeah, and I agree. I think right now that we're just scratching the budget. We're not really digging deep. You'd said if you keep cutting, you're going to have a municipality that no one wants to live in. Well, if we keep spending, we're going to have a municipality that no one's going to want to live in. And if you look at Penn Hills, you look at these other areas around us, that's what they've done. They've spent money frivolously. They have gone way above and beyond their means, and they're left with those financial problems. And we all sit here and say, how the heck did Penn Hills School Board do that? How the heck did they ever get to that point? When we have $4.8 million in our general fund, and we're targeted to utilize $700,000 to $500,000 each and every year, something's got to turn. We're either going to continue to increase taxes, which if we look at municipalities and boroughs that have high millage rates, you'll see the kind of municipalities that those represent. So we most likely don't want to continue to raise and raise and raise. So all I'm asking is just to look at some alternative ways. You had said council's pay is $25,000. I understand, out of a $31 million budget, that is minuscule. But to tell the public what that represents, right, $25,000 represents half of a new police officer's starting salary. Right? They start off at $54,000.
That is correct.
That's not true.
Well, with benefits, it's more.
Yeah, but their starting salary, which I stated, it is correct. So I'm not saying that that's going to save the municipality by getting rid of the $300 or $400. I know, I'm very well aware that's a nominal amount. But if we continue to look at those ways, I think anyone, if you ask the public, because, Greg, you had mentioned, well, when we asked the public, do we want to do this with the dispatch center, do we want to do this with refuse, this is what they came back to say. If you ask the public, hey, would you rather us get $300 a month, or would you rather us have half a police officer's salary paid for, I think we know what they would say there. So I don't want to dwell on one point. I just want to ask that we look at alternative ways. Look at overtime spending. Some of these departments' overtime is ridiculous if you guys have looked at that.
And Chad, to bring, your point is well taken, but to bring up just the overtime is there, if you're talking about the police department, probably more so.
Any department.
It's there because, why? Because officers haven't been replaced. Doug Cole does a good job as far as keeping court time down. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scene that we try to impart upon the public, but you can't impart everything upon the public.
No, I agree. I just recommend that we look at, if we look at the animal control, right, it's 4 hours or 8 hours of overtime each and every weekend. Look at just changing around the schedule. Maybe he works 8 hours less during the weekend. That way we're not paying overtime each and every year. I know you guys went into that one a lot and pretty deep
last year. We did, right.
But I'm just suggesting look at alternative ways. Dig a little bit deeper.
When a police officer makes a late arrest, how do you stop overtime?
No, I never mentioned police overtime.
When the snow falls, how do you stop overtime?
Well, that one actually is pretty manageable. You can look at alternating schedule, so instead of people coming in at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they can start later in the day, and that way you can take away a few hours.
Well, we would need a bigger public works force to do that, Chad.
Again, I'm just.
Sometimes
spitballing ideas out
sometimes spending overtime is less expensive than
Yes.
hiring.
Tim, I'd like to ask a question to you. When does council get overtime?
Thank you.
No, council doesn't get it.
Oh, we don't
Not
get,
in the
oh,
borough
okay,
code.
okay, thank you.
No, and I agree, and I think public servants are
Well, I mean, I want to get back to one point on what you mentioned, Chad, about other places spending money frivolously, indicating that we're spending money frivolously. And I do not believe we are spending money frivolously. The lion's share of the cost in this municipality and any other municipality, as well as school districts, as you well know, Chad, are labor costs and benefits.
Absolutely.
That's the lion's share. So not replacing people, police officers when they retire, public works people, people here in the administrative staff, and I can give it to you
No,
on how
absolutely.
many,
I mean, your budget,
how much money this municipality has saved since the year 2000 with not replacing people. I went through that 3 years ago on the 2014 budget. So I would not venture to say that this municipality spends money frivolously. What you can say is that we have decent salaries here in this municipality. Now, that's not something that you're going to get rid of with union contracts you're negotiating. You're not going to get rid of that. Okay, that kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. All right, in order to get things in line. I think we had a very successful Act 111 interest arbitration. I think it was very fair. I think we made some headway there. There are areas in which we're making headway in saving money. As I mentioned, our fund balance is looking better. To touch on that a little bit. The other thing, too, if you looked in the budget, and not $1 million was not budgeted to bring back $1 million from our OPEB fund, other post-employment benefits. All right. Now, what I've mentioned to council at my budget message is that we're trying to make it so, see if the general fund can sustain a little bit of not bringing back $1 million, but saving $300,000. That may be why the fund balance is there. We can bring money back in from the OPEB fund. I'm trying to see how that goes. That we've only taken $250,000. We were budgeted $1 million this year. We've only taken $250,000 from the OPEB. The general fund has sustained that. Plus, the fund balance is getting a little bit better, even given that. So our cash flow is doing pretty well. But if we go into next year, my point being, if we go into next year and on our balance sheet, the accounts receivable we'll be having for the OPEB fund to take money in, we may not have to take it out of the fund balance. That fund balance, you know about budgeting, you're on a school board. That fund balance is there to balance out the budget. Whether we use it or not, we didn't use it this year. So whether we use it or not remains to be seen. We can take it out of the OPEB fund because that's going to be on our accounts receivable balance sheet. All right. So we're trying to save money. Everything that you're looking at right now, I understand what you're saying. But one thing I do want to say is we're not spending money frivolously.
No, I agree, and I don't think we are yet. But I think we are approaching a crossroads, and we can be a thriving neighborhood, or we can be a neighborhood that spends money like Penn Hills. We oftentimes paint in politics, right? It's either the worst, the world's going to end, snow's going to be all over the streets, we're not going to have cops, crime's going to be up, well, it's already up, but all these things are going to happen if we make cuts, and I just don't believe that to be true. I think there are some ways we can look at to make some cuts to save some money, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again,